Today we have a crazy revenge story involving tax evasion. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, leave your trash cans out and see where they end up. Well, this isn't exactly revenge and it's not that petty, but I have a newish annoying neighbor who does not fit the neighborhood vibe. The moment he moved in, he was able to irritate people even a block away. When I walk my dog, people tell me they're sorry I have to live next to him. Our street is pretty and clean, everyone has a gardener or does their own yard, everyone takes their trash cans in, except this weirdo. He gets a gardener every few months and until then, his yard looks trashed. He lets his kids leave their stuff all over the sidewalk and he never puts his trash cans back after trash day. He puts his cans out right in front of my car, I only have street parking, and basically in front of my kitchen window so there's no avoiding them and leaves them there forever, taking up a parking space in front of my place. So now I give him a day and if he doesn't put them away, I just move them in front of his driveway. If he needs to leave, well, I guess he has to put them away. The first time I did it, his car wasn't there, so he would have had to get out in the street to put them away. They're just at the right spot where his Ring camera can't see me. It's little, but it's satisfying knowing he has to stop what he's doing and put them away. So, I mean, when everybody's yard is all nice and manicured and whatnot and looks great, I could understand being frustrated by a neighbor who doesn't do enough upkeep. Or if, their kids leave stuff all over the sidewalk, I completely understand being upset about that. And I could even understand if, it's in a spot you usually park in, being a bit frustrated that they don't go and put their trash cans back immediately. But does anybody else feel like it's a bit overreaching here? I mean, I don't know, maybe OP assumes that talking to them will go nowhere because they've displayed enough behavior that says they probably won't change anyways. But OP would rather go out there and move another man's trash cans over a complaint about public parking, by the way, than, maybe try to talk it out with them? Endless Ooploop commented, "Okay, trash can Karen, you actually sound like a nightmare neighbor. Street parking means you park in public space. That parking spot doesn't belong to you. Public space means your neighbor has just as much of a right to park his trash bins there, whether you like it or not. Oh no, he has uncut grass. What a horrible person." I live in a nice neighborhood where everyone has gardens and nice lawns and fancy cars. The house across the street from me is literally the neighbor you just described. Nobody in our neighborhood cares. Sometimes people having unkempt yards has less to do with laziness and more to do with not having the time to do it, which is often the case with people like my neighbor who have kids. And some of us fall into that sweet spot where we can't afford a caretaker for our lawn and garden, but we can afford to live in a nice neighborhood if we work our butt off all the time so our children can be safe. You did a great service by making your neighbor's life just a little more difficult than it already was. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is Steal My Seat, Deal with My Toddler. Took the family, husband, kids, 1.5-year-old human wrecking ball to the aquarium, went to see the open ocean feeding. We got there 30 minutes early to snag good seats. Mission accomplished, husband and kids seated, I ran 2 of the kids to the bathroom. When I came back, about 20 minutes before showtime, some random 10 to 12-year-old kid had wedged himself right next to my husband. As my husband stood up to pass me the toddler, the kid scooted down the bench, leaving one tight spot. Awkward, but whatever. I sat down, my husband stood behind us, kids on the floor next to me. Cue my toddler immediately starting to climb on the railing like a caffeinated monkey. I eventually gave him my seat so he could sit and hang on the rail and sat down on the floor next to my other kids. And then the kid tried it again. As soon as I got up, he slid further down the bench like he was going for a gold medal in seat stealing. At that point, I made a decision. Enjoy sitting next to my fully charged toddler. The show starts and my son proceeds to get up, sit down, hang on the railing, rinse and repeat about 4,782 times. The kid is visibly annoyed. I am spiritually thriving. Bonus, there was no one behind us, so my toddler's antics weren't bothering anyone but him. When my son hopped off the seat for a second, the kid tried to scoot in again, and I hit him with a, "Excuse me, he's sitting there." He moved. When he tried it again, I said, "You already scooted us off the bench. My son's sitting there." Mom voice activated. No parents in sight the entire time. Just me, my chaos goblin, and one very annoyed seat thief. Was it petty? Absolutely. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. I mean, I completely understand some random 12-year-old kid in public. You don't really want to just go around trying to parent someone else's kids, or I wouldn't even really want to talk to the kid necessarily, because you hear all of these stories of Karens who pop out and they're like, "Are you talking to my kid?" But I kind of have to say, I feel like the kid won here. I feel like that kid kind of out-bullied OP's entire family. OP only spoke up once it finally started affecting their kid. Suspicious Weird 373 commented, "So essentially a child managed to slowly but surely move your entire weak-willed family from the seats you spent 30 minutes queuing for? Your revenge is that you said something in a mum voice that the child just ignored because he could feel the lack of authority rolling from your family like a tsunami. The kid probably barely even registered your child jumping up and down, but I bet every other adult did, just thinking that you were terrible parents who didn't want to control their child." Our next story is, you know you've messed up when kids start going to school during their break just out of spite. Currently, mass protests against corruption are taking place in Serbia. A canopy at an illegal train station collapsed and lost 16 people's lives. Students have begun to voice their demands, seeking answers. I'm really shortening the story because if I start telling it fully, I won't be able to stop. Universities started blocking operations until their demands are met, and toward the end of December, high schools slowly began joining the movement. Here, high schools are directly below universities, unlike in America. At first, only a few high schools joined, and even then mostly just third or fourth year students. As December came to a close, our government came up with the perfect solution to prevent further blockades. They declared an emergency school break 7 days before the regular winter break, without providing any reason, affecting both high schools and elementary schools, even though elementary schools weren't participating in any blockades. So, as high school students, we decided to go to school during the break out of spite, just to block it. A blockade basically means you hang out in school and do nothing. Even though we weren't doing anything, I never thought I would willingly go to school during vacation just to prove a point. So from what I'm gathering, it's like a protest against the major corruption that basically led to major security and constructural oversight, and ultimately the needless loss of 16 people. You know, I just gotta say, I'm blown away by the scale and the unity that happens in European protests compared to ones that happen in America. It just always seems way more organized, has way more participation. Is it just because America is so spread out? This story, by the way, kind of reminds me of in Miami, Florida back a few years ago. There was a complete giant apartment building that just fell apart. 100 people just gone. How does that happen? Tremenda Karusha commented, "This display of defiant solidarity from Serbia's youth is truly gobsmacking. 16 lives lost, and yet their schools still become a battleground against systemic corruption, making me wonder what it takes for our own students here to stand up and make such bold statements. What's holding American pupils back from joining similar protests when faced with political injustices at home?" Our next story is, you want to make me do your work for you? Well, now you can't take your break. I have a coworker who is incredibly lazy. She's never been a hard worker, but within the last year, it's gotten bad. She could technically retire, but chooses not to for whatever reason, which I wouldn't mind if you actually did your job, but not only will she never help the office, she doesn't even get her own dang work done. As you can probably tell, this woman annoys the heck out of me for a multitude of reasons. We have a system in our office where all customer questions go into the same queue. If it's an email, a voicemail, part of an online chat conversation with an employee in another department, it goes into this queue. For whatever reason, anytime my coworker encounters a question that will take more than about 10 seconds to answer, she assigns it to me. Which, yes, I am very knowledgeable about our department. However, this woman has worked here 3 times as long as I have, and should know these things herself. Today, she assigns me a question, and as soon as I read it, I have no idea why she assigned it to me, because she should have assigned it to my boss and/or talked to my boss about it. As mentioned, I assign it to my boss and then go and tell her about it. During the beginning of our conversation, I overhear said coworker on the phone ordering food for lunch. Usually, she hangs up on the phone, waits about 5 minutes, and then heads over to pick up the food. Well, I'm still in my boss's office talking about this question. I should probably mention my manager loves to talk, and while I'm usually trying to slowly back out of her office to end a conversation, this time I take a seat and proceed to actively engage. So the minutes are ticking by and my coworker can't take her break because someone always needs to be in the office, and obviously I'm unavailable. At one point, I kind of tilt the chair so I can see her out of the corner of my eye, and I can tell she's just itching to run out of here, but she can't leave. What should have been at most a 5-minute conversation turns into a 20-minute conversation. Then, I added a little more revenge because as soon as I left my manager's office, I ran out of our office to use the restroom just to delay her break even further. I can't tell you how satisfied I feel right now. Makes me think back in my high school days, I had an English teacher where if you brought up the right topics that interested him, he would go the entire lesson just rambling on and on. Especially the Ramones. If you mentioned the Ramones, he would go on and on about how cool he is for having been able to still go see them in person at one point in their life before it wasn't possible anymore. I remember he would have this coffee mug and he would bring it up to drink it, and then he would think of another thing to say and bring it right back down to his podium. He listens to another person pipe up, "But what about the Ramones?" Brings that coffee mug right back down to the podium to keep going. Zareb1 commented, "Why can she assign you everything? Discuss this with your boss, especially around the miscreant's lunch break." Phage Rage commented, "Man, I hate that this is a question. In a world with good coworkers, it's normal and preferred for people within a group to have specialties. So OP's a beast with technical problems and complex multi-step stuff, and Lazy McLazy Pants is not great at anything complex but can knock out 80% to 90% of the basic stuff and pass the complex stuff on to the person who is good at those. That's a normal dynamic when people don't suck. I work in that dynamic right now. It's fine because the less technical don't want to get fired, so they pull their weight and do a lot of small tasks, and that frees me up to do the stuff they can't do and don't really want to learn to do. It absolutely sucks that we live in a world where people can't be trusted to do their job and roles have to be so strictly defined so Lazy McLazy Pants folks can't screw over other people. But I'm getting utterly screwed at work because I don't have an engineering degree, so I'm doing an engineer job with the title and pay of a technician that should only do simple stuff. But if I had to do simple stuff all day, I'd rip my hair out. Life is weird and people are complex, and lazy people suck." Our next story is Small Revenge on the Road. A long time ago, when I was commuting for work, I got in the habit of tailing people. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until I was on a road at night tailing the heck out of this car, and they turned their window fluid/wipers on, and my car was sprinkled as a result. Annoyed, I backed off. This only made me realize I was being a turd, but it was a pretty hilarious way to tell me. Fast forward to last year, I'm getting tailed in a slow lane on a busy major freeway, and I turn on my wipers with my window cleaner and smiled to myself about how annoying that is when this car zooms around me and cuts right in front of me to do the same thing back. I crack up laughing because I do love the petty energy. Guy clearly sees me laughing at him and immediately zooms off, illegally fast cutting across 3 lanes of traffic in his tantrum. Probably shouldn't have done it. Road rage these days can be dangerous, but I wasn't prepared for the grown adult to pitch such a fit over it. You know, for exactly the reason OP mentioned at the very end, road rage these days can be dangerous. I don't know, maybe I spend too much time on like r/public freakout or whatever. But basically, I'm conditioned at this point, even if I am truly pissed off at somebody, if I've gotta pull off and pull into some like parking lot or something, it's a better alternative than continuing to annoy the man-child operating the multi-thousand-pound metal machine. Freddy Foreshadowing commented, "Makes me think of one of George Carlin's bits. He said something about pulling alongside someone and then shouting, 'Pull over, pull over, pull over!' Then when they pull over, you keep going. But probably lucky the guy didn't end up causing some kind of major collision behind him, or even being part of it, cutting across lanes like that." Our next story is Make Up Your Own Rules? I'll take it all the way to the top. My 31-year-old male, wife, 32-year-old female, and I love to play a card game version of the famous game with railroads and jail. We were playing one night when there was a rules dispute over a turn that would have totally changed the game, in a typical husband-wife bantering over a game way, so I finally caved after a minute of arguing who was right and who was wrong, but told her I would figure this out for the future. Instead of just saying that we can keep playing by the rules she said, I went petty. I sent an email to the company's customer support asking about the situation, and they confirmed I was right. I could have just forwarded her the email, but I wanted to make it a big thing. I printed out 20 copies of the email and taped them all around our house, and even folded one into the card deck so that would be the first thing she saw when she opened it next time. She laughed when she got home and finally agreed I was right and should have won. I just want to figure out why OP's being so guarded and secretive about Monopoly. It's Monopoly, they're talking about Monopoly. Like, surely you guys agree with me when I say this story would have been so much better if they actually detailed what the rule was. Although I will say playing by standardized Monopoly rules is how I found out that growing up, we definitely played with some house rules of our own. One of them was when you get a fee or you go to jail, you pay the $50 or the income tax, that all goes to the middle, and if you land on free parking, you get the pot. And another simple one was you can just pass on a property. You don't have to auction it. I didn't know for a long time that in standard Monopoly, you either have to buy it or you have to auction a property. Freddy Foreshadowing commented, one of the Car Talk hosts, who had been married several times, once said that if there's anything he's learned from his past relationships, it's that you can either choose to be right or be happy. You somehow managed to do both, defying the natural order of the universe. You must be a witch. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, but you can also never find them when you need them. Our next story is, from 5 stars to jail bars, I threw my sister in jail. Technically, she's my half-sister, but moving forward, I'd been trying to get a restraining order against my mother, her husband, and my half-sister. With everything I had, it should have been a done deal, but the judge thought otherwise and denied it. Before we left the courtroom, my lawyer asked to put a statement on the record which was that I had all the power, and if they showed up on your property, I have the right to have them arrested. I told them I understood, and then looked directly at them and said, if you show up on my property, I will not ask you to leave or tell you to leave. I'll just call the police. You will be arrested and I will press full charges for trespassing. A little on my sister, she is spoiled. My parents put all their money and efforts on her, and it's now bitten them in the butt. Read prior posts on my family to get a better understanding, but the long story, we come from money. She was the chosen one, she got everything. I built my own life. I'm getting ready to move and I've been packing, and she showed up yesterday. I did exactly as I told them I would. I didn't ask or tell, I just called 911 and explained the situation. The police showed up and asked her what was going on. She said I was her brother and that she wanted to talk. I told the police and her that she had no business being here and to arrest her, and I was pressing full charges. And they did just that. I feel nothing. The level of hatred I have for her is dangerous. She has treated me like less than any kind of a living human being my entire life. She thrives on this. I feel like I was perfectly justified in doing this. They knew what would happen if any of them showed up, so freak around and find out. Don't get me wrong, this post fits here, but it's almost just not revenge. It's like pro-promise. Can you truly call it revenge if you tell somebody, I'm going to do exactly this if you do this, and then you follow through with it? That said, my opinion passes the vibe check. Avid Learner Bot commented, actually, you really had the right to lock up your sister. I mean, come on, she's been a brat all her life. That judge was an idiot for not granting you that restraining order. Anyways, it sounds like you're pretty confident in standing firm now. Kudos to you. OP responded commenting, I created a whole lot of problems for her. I pressed charges and will not drop them. Then I had her car towed since she was arrested and blocking me in my driveway. So I really freaked her and I'm guessing her dad over. From my understanding, our mom cut her off so it all falls to her dad now. Like I said, freak around and find out. Our next story is Rude Neighbor. I live in the upper unit of a duplex that's stacked on top of each other. We moved in not too long ago, and the neighbor has been incredibly rude to my boyfriend and me. A brief summary of her is that she expects we completely alter our lifestyle and layout of our apartment to better suit her unrealistic needs. We cannot walk above her late, shower, use the bathroom, wash the dishes, talk to each other, etc., all because it disturbs her. She's told us multiple times that doing the laundry at the various times we are, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., aka when we get home from work, is unreasonable and inconsiderate of her. She'll take out her anger on us and just yell at us or start slamming all her doors below us. One thing she asked of me stuck with me. When you're using the kitchen faucet, please turn it off slowly, because when you do it too fast, it makes a pop sound in my sink that scares me. I suddenly love washing dishes. I will slam it off as much as I randomly can throughout the day, and then sit in silence to hear her groan. It's the most lukewarm revenge, but it makes me smile. I'm guessing whoever owns this building just doesn't care about doing anything about any of this until it starts like somehow costing them money, right? I don't know, maybe it's one of those situations where this is like one of the most affordable options or even options in general in like a certain area. I guess I would just hope to see more intervention from whatever like building owner or manager or whatever than having a situation like this happen between tenants. Imaginary Yak 6487 commented, "I'm a manager for an apartment complex. I have one that complains constantly about the person above her. I can hear walking, they're watching babies, their 2 grandchildren, and I hear crying. I hear the kids playing, make them stop. I told her that quiet time is from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. What time is this happening? Oh, during the day when she's trying to take a nap. Ma'am, people are allowed to live in their apartments." Hey Pretty Lady Ma'am commented, "I had a pregnant woman living downstairs for me 20 years ago. It was midsummer and I had 2 toddlers. The temperature was in the triple digits, so we stayed indoors. It was heck. She complained when they, the kids, walked, ran, played, ate, bathed, breathed. She was a nightmare. She actually called CPS on me for supposedly locking my son in his room. The lock's on the inside, lady. It's summer and wood swells. His door got stuck once for the 1 minute it took me to cross my house and open it. That's okay though. She dried her laundry on her porch out back below my porch that my son loved to pee off. Sorry you had to wash it again." No, I'm really not. Kids are great. Our next story is, "Don't give my wife the stink eye." This is my wife's petty revenge. Yesterday, she was at a Shell station parked at a pump about to get out of her SUV to get gas. Her door was about halfway open when some Karen whipped into the parking lot and nearly took her door off. She then glared at my wife with what she described as the stink eye, like it was her fault. The Karen then pulls up to the pump, opens her gas cap, puts the nozzle in her tank and fills up. Then she runs inside for a minute to pay or maybe pick up some snacks, who knows. It's obvious to my wife that this Karen is in a crazy hurry. The Karen then comes back out to her car and hops into the driver's seat, forgetting that she left the gas pump nozzle in her vehicle. My wife is a super polite person and usually goes out of her way to help people. If you drop $20 on the ground, she would be the first person to pick it up, tap you on the shoulder, and hand it back to you. So in this situation, she would normally flag down the driver and let them know that the gas pump nozzle was still attached to their car, but not today. On this occasion, pettiness got the best of her. I think you know where this is going. The Karen stepped on the accelerator with the pump nozzle still in her car. Screech! She did some serious damage to her vehicle and possibly the gas pump. Then my wife smiled as she got into her SUV and drove off, first double checking to make sure the gas pump nozzle was not still attached. I don't know if this happened near me, but a few weeks back, I was stopping for gas and I pull up to the pump and I hop out getting ready to use my card or whatever, and then I noticed the entire nozzle and hose was completely ripped out of the pump. It was perfectly coiled up, just sitting right there on the ground in front of the pump. Somebody was either sleep deprived, in some crazy rush, or God forbid some other state of mind. Our next story is my best friend's jerk neighbor. So back in high school and into college, we hung out at my buddy Brandon's house a lot. His neighbor Terry was the most miserable person and constantly came out yelling at us for working on a truck with impact wrenches, playing our radio too loud, idling our trucks too long, and pretty much anything else he could bench about. This went on for years, with it escalating to him calling the cops all the time. The cops would come, realize we weren't breaking the law, and leave. One evening, we trapped some hogs and dropped a few into his backyard. His backyard was very well manicured with tons of flower beds and hogs loving to root around. A few days go by, and nothing is said, and the hog is gone. The very next weekend, he's back up to his same miserable ways, calling the cops multiple times. That's when I thought of the most perfect revenge. We printed estate sale signs with his address and a start time of 6 a.m. early birds welcome knock on door. We posted these at several grocery stores and on light poles around town. The day of his estate sale, we made sure we were nowhere close. The next day, he comes outside and walks over without saying anything until he gets to us. We can barely hold our laughter. He sticks his hand out to us and says, "Truce." We shook hands, and he never said another word to us. I don't know if his wife had something to do with it, or he just realized he wasn't going to win. Misery loves company, so we gave him plenty of company that day. I'm just glad it worked out for OP. I feel like for every crazy, crotchety neighbor like this out there that maybe would extend a hand and say truce, you would have 2 or 3 that would instead double down and go like nuclear and do something that maybe ruins somebody's life. Our next story is email freakery on ex-boss. This was back in the day, like 1998, when email was almost exclusively POP3 and passwords. I'll make mine to be pass1234, try to crack that. I worked for a small IT consultancy in my first IT role, and the main boss, Jack, was an expletive. There was a secondary boss, Charlie, who was also an expletive, but not anywhere near as bad as Jack. Jack made my life heck for 3 years, but I was new in IT, recognized that there was a great opportunity to learn, and learn I did. I soon surpassed Jack's knowledge and realized that not only was he an expletive, but a blowhard. He was never freaking wrong and he knew everything. One time I needed to use a PC in the office that Jack was logged into, and he wasn't there. I called him on his cell and explained the situation, and he gave me his current password, which was Jack's estranged daughter's name and her birth year, like Bella64. I made a note. 2 years later, when I was planning to leave the company, I was standing behind Jack as he logged onto his PC. Guess what? Same password. Now let me be clear, this guy traumatized me and bullied me during my time served there, and to this day, I have PTSD flashbacks about his behavior. In the last month I worked for this expletive, he was going to the Netherlands. Company was in London, on business trips frequently, and he dropped in conversation that he had the hots for a lady in the business relationship. Well, I left shortly after this and started my own company, but out of curiosity and spite, I tried to log onto Jack's POP3 email using his old password. Freak me, he used the same password for his email as the one he had never changed for the network. What a freaking expletive. As timely fate would have it, the lovely lady in Amsterdam for whom he had the hots also had the hots for Jack, and she had just sent him a salacious email suggesting naughty times next time he was in Dutchville. Since this was POP3, and I knew that my old company connected on dial-up every 15 minutes to collect mail, I just binned it. I kept a close watch. Dutch lady sent increasingly desperate messages to Jack. I binned them all. They eventually connected via the technological miracle of telephony, but I royally freaked with their email correspondence for months before finally Jack the expletive changed his password. Happy days. Not gonna lie, I thought OP was gonna say something about like Jack is supposedly happily married and then also has the hots for this Amsterdam woman. I thought OP was gonna go and just like expose this guy and get him in all kinds of trouble. Horror Grade Candy commented, "Sounds like Jack really had it coming." I get the satisfaction of seeing someone who treated you poorly getting their comeuppance, especially when it's served up on a silver platter like that. The fact that he used the same simple password for everything was kind of a rookie mistake, but it's pretty wild how he didn't think to change it even after you knew it. It's funny how a little tech knowledge and a grudge can go a long way. Honestly, I don't blame you for getting back at him after the way he treated you. I'm sure you learned a ton working there, but that kind of a toxic leadership can really leave a mark. People like Jack don't realize that their actions can have long-term effects on others, and you definitely got your revenge in a way that most of us can only dream of. Our next story is, don't insult a customer when you're doing tax evasion. Hello here, I'm from Korea, and I just noticed the sub, you people are hilarious. So anyway, here's my petty act of revenge on my former hair salon. In our country, stores are not allowed to refuse issuing a receipt and 2, charge different prices to credit card and cash users. If they do that, it's tax evasion with a rather large fine, but the taxation agency can't usually find out whether a store is doing such practices without a customer reporting them, which doesn't happen often. I mean, why report a store when you get a discount for paying in cash? My hair salon was no different. They charged $2 less to pay in cash and had a habit of skipping receipts. However, the last time I went there to do my hair with my mother, they charged extra prices for procedures that were, to say the least, completely unnecessary, such as a so-called extra vitamin hair cream, whatever that means, with the result that they charged $20 more from the original bill. A ripoff, to be honest. So my mother got mad when she saw the bill and asked they remove the extra charge. They refused, and to tell a long story short, they were very rude with the refusal. Won't go into details here, but they actually called my mom a miserly beggar and an obnoxious woman, and threatened to call the cops if she didn't freak out this instant. My mother would have started a fight right there and then, but I stopped her. I simply turned on my recording function on my phone and paid the bill, innocently asking whether they charged more for credit cards and didn't give out receipts. Then, when I was sure their admittance to tax evasion was on tape, I told them to apologize to my mom for what they said, or I would take matters into my own hands. Now, they didn't know about one thing. I'm a business major with plans to become a lawyer, with the result that I know rather more about tax law than your average student. Of course, they laughed at me, but you bet they weren't smiling one bit when I pulled out my phone and reported their tax evasion practices to the authorities, with the recording as evidence. From what I heard, they got a rather heavy fine, 25% of their earnings, so I guess I won? 25% of their earnings? OP definitely won. The only problem is, if they don't keep track of any sales that they do in cash anyways, how do you truly trust that 25% of the credit card earnings is even fair enough there? Tremenda Karusha commented, "The sheer audacity of that salon owner still has me fuming. Pulling one over on customers and then getting rude when called out? Crazy." Our next story is, "Leave a nasty note on my legally parked scooter, get banned from parking in front of your garage." Years ago, I was at my girlfriend's house from about 10 to 2 a.m. playing board games. In San Francisco, it's tough to find parking, so I rode my scooter to her place and parked between two driveway cutouts on a curb that was approximately 3 feet wide. This is quite common, perfectly legal, and normally not a big deal. To be clear, I was not blocking their garage, but I did park between two cars parked in front of their garage. I've been to her 6-unit apartment building dozens of times and have seen their no parking signs on the building between the 3 garage doors, in front of the curb area I parked at. I came out to my scooter with both vehicles still parked in the same position they were in when I arrived to find a note on my seat. I loved the anger, sarcasm, rage, and entitlement, so of course I kept it, and it's now placed prominently on my refrigerator for all to read. I appreciate this guy's effort and outrage, despite being a petty note to leave. It kind of reminds me of something I might do, making sure I was in compliance with the law, however. The note, sadly I can't share a picture of it. I am wondering if you are illiterate, have a poor sense of spatial recognition, don't care if your bike is damaged when I have to pull out of the space since you've not left me enough room to do so safely, or you don't care if you are sighted or towed. Move your bike before you're sorry you ignored the no parking sign, and don't park here again. There are many other available spaces for you to park. Next day at work, I looked up the parking codes in San Francisco, and turns out you cannot park in front of your garage if you live in a building with more than 2 units. And you can only install no parking signs on a garage door. I called the SF311 and reported the situation, and the next time I went to visit her, the no parking signs between the garages were removed, and I never saw a car parked in front of the garage doors again. I only felt bad for the other 2 people who could no longer park in front of their garages because of this Karen/Kevin. I just think whoever wrote this note needs to go to some empty parking lot somewhere and do a lot of practice on parking and pulling out of a parking space. OP wasn't even like right up on your car or blocking your car, and you have to go, well, I can't do so safely now. What if I have to rush off somewhere at 3 in the morning? Tremenda Karusha commented, "The neighbor's note reads like an over-the-top manifesto. Why escalate parking disputes into such an impassioned diatribe when the scooter was clearly within legal boundaries?" Bent Not Broken 96 commented, "Because car drivers feel entitled and feel that two-wheelers are not entitled. I caught a guy one time trying to move my motorcycle out of a parking spot so he could park his car there." That said, our next story is, "Old balls got handed to him." This was a really short and sweet, immediate petty revenge moment. I was enjoying a cup of coffee on my back porch. We live on the 10th hole green on a golf course. It's set in nature, nestled by trees and filled with deer and turkeys and all sorts of other things like that. It's a very Keep Tahoe Blue kind of place in the Sierra foothills. This entitled jerk of a man in his 70s cruises to the green on his golf cart and proceeds to jump out of the cart with a lit cigarette in his mouth that he just throws on the ground before putting his ball. I was kind enough to wait for his shot, and then when he walked back to the cart, I asked him if he was going to pick up his cigarette. He rolled his old man eyes at me, and I looked at his friends and said, "Really? You're gonna let this guy throw his nasty cigarette butt? It's not a personal course." They weakly shrugged their shoulders and they all drove away. I put down my coffee and walked out front to my driveway. Off to the side, out of view, the next tee is directly across the street from my driveway, so as soon as the old man put his ball on the tee and takes his driver back, I immediately yell, "4, you freaking litter bug," at the top of my lungs and completely ruined his shot. The ball literally bounced off his own golf cart and he practically threw his driver. It brought me immense amounts of joy. Thankfully, he had the foresight not to retaliate, and they all drove off down the fairway. Now, the question is he an honorable enough man to keep the stroke? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. No, he is not an honorable enough man. I gotta be honest though, this story reminds me of Happy Gilmore. "You will not make this putt, you..." word for donkey. Twinkies and Wine commented, "I live in Reno and the number of times I've seen the Sierras and surrounding areas on fire makes me even more enraged at his aloofness. Freak that guy. Good on you for freaking his crap up." Our next story is, "You abandoned me, so I won't dance with you." This story isn't mine but my friend's. I have permission to share it. For some context, we live in Brazil and every June there are big festivals honoring St. John, Festa Junina. It's tradition for high schools to organize dance groups as part of the celebrations. Since it's a Catholic festival, Protestants usually don't participate, which is the case for my friend Peter. All names are fake. But since it was our last year of high school, Peter went out of his way to secretly join the dance behind his family's back. With that established, let's get to the revenge. Peter was dating Lana in 2024, but she dumped him on Christmas Eve to get back with her ex. When that didn't work out, she came crawling back to Peter, who unfortunately forgave her. Then 2 weeks ago, she hit him with the whole "I'm confused and need time to think" line, which was a lie because she immediately confessed her feelings to a girl in her class. And when that didn't work out, guess what she did? Tried to run back to Peter with this message. "Do you want to dance with me at the Festa Junina?" Peter replied, "I still have to check if I can participate, but I'll let you know." Fast forward to the first dance rehearsal. Lana was there, smugly confident she already had her partner, because apparently when she asks, she gets what she wants. Except another girl had already asked Peter to dance, and Lana hadn't noticed. So when the dance instructor called for partners to pair up, she walked over to Peter and he just said, "Not dancing with you, I'm dancing with her. Sorry." Gotta admit, seeing the disbelief on her face was chef's kiss. Now she'll either have to dance alone or with someone she doesn't like, which is extra awkward since the whole point is dancing in pairs. Side note, she had asked a mutual friend if I had a partner, but I took too long to respond. By the time I answered, she'd already found someone else, and just to be clear, if she asked me now, the answer's no. Fooled Peter once, shame on you. Fool Peter twice, shame on Peter. But the fooled man can't get fooled again. Our next story is, real estate agent tested me after an international flight. I, 34 non-binary, was renting this tiny studio, if this place was 20 square meters, I'll eat my jacket, apartment that went up for sale. All through the process, I was polite and careful with the agents, making sure the tiny space was always clean. It was so small that any mess looked major, making sure I was available at convenient times when they needed to do maintenance, etc. Then they decided they needed to paint the apartment, including the bathroom. And because I had one window in my kitchenette, nothing else, it would be very hard to breathe in there until it dried. So I did what I knew I shouldn't and told the agent I was going overseas for 2 weeks so they could paint then. But because I had valuables in the apartment, including an inherited MacBook I was trying to download photos off, I insisted they had to make the appointments with my dad to be in the apartment and they could not access without him there. About halfway through my trip, I realized my dad hadn't mentioned anything about the painting. So I asked him, and he said they never contacted him. So I immediately called the agent, only to discover that the painting was completed, photos had been taken, and they were preparing open houses. I was told I could not stop them. One of their open houses was planned for 8 a.m. the day after I arrived home. I told them no, it wasn't, and if they showed up at that time, not only would my unpacked suitcase be spread around the small space, but I would answer the door in my underwear. I'm a pretty large person. This would not be a pleasant sight. I got home at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night and discovered they had photographed the apartment in such a way that every item in the apartment was on full display on the for sale sign outside on the property, on the website, and in the newspaper. Guess who knocked on my door at 8 a.m.? And guess what I did? As promised, I answered the door in my underwear, my suitcase and dirty clothes all over the floor. The agent profusely apologized and said they'd forgotten which day was being rescheduled and ran away. Then, a couple of days later, when I was back at work, I discovered that several pieces of jewelry were missing, gone during the open house viewings. The agent didn't care, insisted they were watching everyone in the apartment, so I went online. I posted Google reviews, Facebook reviews, complaints on their website. I got a phone call that I was getting my rent heavily discounted for that month, and the agents had to slow the open houses from 4 a week to 2. They never sold the place, it was a hole. But I will never forget that answering the door in my underwear got me the power I needed over those jerks. Surely there has to be some kind of malpractice going on here. If you're still actively renting the place, they can't just barge in without telling you, right? Even if you aren't home for a period of time. Accomplished Type 547 commented, "I'm horrified that they would allow all those people in your house without you or your dad's presence, and post pictures with your belongings showing. A discounted rent isn't enough." OP responded, "A part of me wishes I'd fought harder, but at the time, I was just happy to have the reduction and I moved out not long after. But I also think that's why I definitely count answering the door in my underwear as my main revenge. Because, yeah, to a real estate agent, the complaints and rent discount was probably nothing. But seeing me like that definitely taught at least one of them to be mindful of irritating jet-lagged travelers." Abject Director 7626 commented, "Our last apartment, the landlord tried to schedule lots of showings. We agreed to lots, but insisted we had to be there. They said they had the right, blah blah blah, and we agreed they had the right. We told them they could either sign a form saying that they would be watching and supervising, and that they would be financially responsible for anything stolen and broken, or they could do showings we were there for. He tried to bully us, but we weren't dumb kids, said we were respecting the lease, and making them be responsible didn't change that, but also protected us." Our next story is, I guess it's a penny revenge. Back in high school, I took an accounting class. The teacher, let's call him Mr. S, was a bit of a jerk. While he lectured once a week, the rest of the week was spent doing workbooks solo. His rule was that everyone had one full period to hand their work in once the first person handed theirs in. Since it was basically adding and subtracting, I generally finished in 45 minutes and then bullcrapped with my friend in the back of the class. He was also fast, until someone else handed in their paper. Mr. S didn't like that I finished quickly and was talking, so he moved my seat right next to his desk. At that point, instead of talking, I would sleep while waiting for people to turn in their papers. One day, Mr. S was lecturing, and in my half-asleep stage, I saw the electrical cord of an overhead projector, yes, I'm old, land on my desk and start moving toward me. I didn't think about it until 10 seconds later when it was wrapped around my throat. It was tight enough that I couldn't breathe. I first tried to elbow him, but the chair back was in the way. Then I tried to pull the overhead projector off its desk so that I could swing it at him. I doubt that it would have swung, but I was panicking. When the projector was about to go over, he stopped and yelled, "Whoa, whoa, what are you doing?" I turned around and screamed, "I couldn't freaking breathe, you jerk." Since I was young, I didn't think there was anything I could do and didn't tell another adult until months later. It was the guidance counselor and she told me there was nothing she could do, including changing my classes. If I was older and wiser, I would have called bullcrap and filed assault charges. Now, onto the revenge. For extra credit, Mr. S had students sell boxes of candy for $5. I think it was for charity, but I have no real idea. I was running an A in the class, so I usually ignored it. This time I asked for a box of candy. He looked very confused, but gave me one. Instead of selling it for $5, I sold it to my friend for $2. The next day, at the beginning of class, he asked everyone individually except for me if they had the money. Then he asked if anyone else had money for him. I raised my hand and said, "Me." Even though my desk was next to his, I got up and walked around my desk to his so that I was behind him. I then put my hand out and thoom! A handful of pennies landed on his desk. The class all looked up. Thoom! A second handful of pennies. The class burst out laughing. Thoom! A third handful of pennies and continued laughter. I returned to my seat, reached in my pocket, and flicked one last penny onto the pile. He was ticked. He told me that he wanted money. My response? Pennies are legal tender. I thought you would know that as an accounting teacher. He then dumped the pennies on my desk. I put my workbook on top of them and did my work with pennies falling everywhere. At the end of class, I dumped the pennies back in my pocket. The next day, he waited until the end of class and asked me for the money. I still gave him pennies. He asked, "Did you at least roll them?" My response, "Freak no," and I tossed a bag full of pennies at him. I'm pretty sure that I didn't get in trouble because he was worried about the entire story coming out. Edit to say this was likely in 1993, possibly 92, depending when in the year it happened. Yeah, no, 93, 92 or not, I feel like this guy is still incredibly lucky that he didn't get reported for that. I mean, how do you not go home and your parents say, "Hey champ, how did school go today?" and you don't mention your accounting teacher choking you out, strangling you? "Mom, was it normal back when you went to school that your teachers choked you out with a projector cord?" Underground Avenue commented, "This guy is really lucky you didn't press charges or had self-defense training. This isn't administrative leave, that is jail time. And if you're woken up by someone trying to strangle you, any reasonably qualified lawyer would have gotten you out, even if you smashed his brains in with a projector." Our next story is smoldering butts. Pulling into the grocery store today, some dude in his pickup truck cut me off and tossed his cigarette butt out the window under the hood of my car. The lot was mostly full, so we pulled into one of the curbside-only slots and then walked inside. Every slot had a warning that anyone not curbside would be towed. So, of course, I circled around and called the towing number. As much as I wanted to, I figured it probably wasn't a good idea to stick around to see his reaction. I also picked his cigarette butt up and shoved it back through his cracked window onto the driver's seat just in case he made it out of the store before they showed up. Honestly, it wasn't being cut off that ticked me off, it was the litter. To be fair, I think it goes without saying, I don't think there's anybody that actually likes seeing other people drop their cigarette butts onto the ground. I myself probably wouldn't go to the effort that OP did, but if I saw somebody else do so, I think I would be quietly approving of it. Nasadowsk commented, "I once was on the Garden State Parkway, New Jersey. Stop and go traffic, guy near me tosses a butt out the window. About half a millisecond later, the voice of God tells, 'Pick up the butt now!' The guy hesitated, and on went the lights. Finally, a ticked-off cop right when and where you needed him." Our next story is, keep your rat hands off my popsicle. I used to keep popsicles in the company fridge. My buddy and I would take turns buying them. One day, I go in and this old gal had one for herself and 2 more that she was grabbing. Not sure why the extras. I took them from her and told her I purchased them. Why did she take them? She said she thought the company bought them. I said the company wouldn't label them with my name. I left a rubber rat inside the box. Someone heard the old gal squeal when it fell into her hand. I did get talked to by the team for the incident, but she could hardly keep the smile off of her face when I described the prank. I mean, not only did they have the confrontation where you said, "Why are you taking the thing labeled with my name?" but then they continued to do so, and it's not like you actually harmed them. What do you say freak me for? Kellyanne74 commented, "I don't understand why you got a talking to, not her. She was stealing. You had already labeled your property. She had already been told that they were your property, and she disregarded that and attempted to steal from you again. Had she not had her thieving hands in your property, no one would have ever known there was a toy rat in there. She's the problem here, not you. Why would you keep an employee on that can't be trusted not to steal from other employees? What else can't you trust her with? What else is she stealing or being sly about?" Our next story is, you want me to sing? I'll sing. My mom heard me singing this song as a child for the first time, and it was so awful she started offering it as a family function. So I wasn't able to refuse and would sing in family reunions, horribly, I must say. I was a kid and saying no was not allowed in my mouth. So I practiced the song in secret, and then one time she asked to sing in a restaurant full of friends and family and strangers. Like, she literally called my name with the microphone with a smirk, and then I was all shy and all. Nailed the song. Asked a second time, different occasion, nailed it again. Hasn't ever asked since. My mom loves singing and she even gets paid to do so. The thing is, she would make me sing first so she could shine later, because everyone would praise about my voice and how I'm so young and could have a career out of this and take the spotlight out of her. I think this is petty. You girls let me know. I mean, just to play devil's advocate, it did reinforce an OP to learn how to sing that song and probably get better as a singer as a whole. So what OP's mom did is undeniably a crappy thing to do to your kid, but it did in some way inspire OP to be better. Extreme Addendum 377 commented, "Great that you stepped up for yourself and learned how to sing. You should work on that if it makes you happy. Sucks that your mom is a bench who gets off on belittling you so she can feel and present herself better." Our next story is, "I'm wrong because you have a higher position? Get smacked. I tried to help us." Around 15 years ago, I worked as a contract nursing assistant for a hospital. One of my jobs as agency CNA was I had to manage a room called the restraint-free room. Mostly because I was a big, tall dude, but also because I was agency and the other CNAs hated it, and the full-timers had their clique and agency ain't in it. Reason it was called the restraint-free room is because the facility had strict rules on restraints and only used them as an absolute last resort, preferring to put them all in a small room with someone watching them and redirecting them. But sometimes you would get someone in there that ticked off the nurses. One night, I got one of these guys. He did not want to wear his CPAP machine. Helps him with sleep apnea and probably needs it, but he hates it because it's bulky as heck, the straps suck, and he could not toss and turn in it without waking up. That plus being stuck in a hospital for 2 weeks and being stove up drove him nuts. In my training as a CNA, I was always told a patient can deny treatment and go AMA, except in certain cases like they're a danger to themselves or others, or they can't make decisions because of some legal or medical condition. Being of somewhat right mind after talking with him, he had the right not to wear the thing or have his concerns about it addressed. I did try to convince him to wear it. It is my job, but when he got agitated, I said he had a right to do it, and I'd mentioned I'd have to chart this. He agreed and we were cool, and this should have been the end of it. I chart that the patient is refusing to wear CPAP, nurse informed. Most places I had worked, it was no problem. Someone with a higher pay grade can handle it, or ignore it. No need for a big deal. Then a nurse practitioner, the charge nurse, and the floor nurse I was under enter into the room at like 4 a.m. and flick the lights on. Nurse practitioner is ticked. For those unaware of the culture of medicine, think of it like hierarchies of tribes, each with its own hierarchy and shared language. In nursing, a nurse practitioner is only rivaled by an anesthesia nurse, even outranking nurse managers. Almost on par with lesser doctors, but not in the doctor tribe, and have enormous autonomy and perks. At the absolute bottom are nursing assistants. While essential, we are expendable and do the dirtiest work and spend the most time with patients. She starts berating the floor nurse and then looking in my direction. These people, meaning nursing assistants, i.e. me, are supposed to make sure the patient is wearing the CPAP. It's their job, and your job to make sure they do this. Are you just sitting here being lazy? All of this in front of the patient, of course, along with another poor patient that just kept falling out of bed, waking him up. Ma'am, you are a nurse practitioner with years of experience and education. If you could show me your technique to do this, I would be much in your debt. After all, CNA school is only a month-long school. Mind? She grabs the CPAP, goes over, "Here, Mr. Whatever, you need this," and tries to put it on. Smack! I think that slap could be heard all the way to the nurse's station. The nurse practitioner's glasses went flying, and in a flurry of activity, code called and a squad of other CNAs and a nurse with a large dose of emergency tranquilizer march in. Stab him in the butt, and he is in 5-point restraints and out of my room because, well, no restraints in the restraint-free room. I turned to the nurse practitioner after the chaos. If one of your RNs wrote non-compliant, You would not say that they are lazy, you would respect their assessment. Why should this be different for a CNA? When I chart this, I don't do this because I want to lay out, I do it to inform the proper people while making sure my patient is safe and I am safe. She looked up, still probably seeing stars, nodded, and apologized. I never had crap from her the rest of my tenure there, and even it helped me fix a laptop she had with a simple repair. Not all revenge has to be malicious. Sometimes it can be educational. Am I crazy for hearing this story and in the back of my mind immediately going, my God, I dream that this gets escalated? I mean, if the guy is of sound mind, you can't just grab a CPAP mask and go up to them and go, here, put this on. I mean, I think the smack was justified at that point. It's kind of assault trying to force that thing onto his face. Intelligent Bad 6286 commented, I'm a nurse, a psychiatric nurse at that, so I know firsthand how quickly things can go sideways with certain patients. My motto has always been, trust the CNAs. You are the ones who spend the most time with patients, do the heaviest work, and often know the unit better than anyone else. Yet the hierarchy in healthcare is broken. Doctors and nurse practitioners often refuse to listen because they believe their degree makes them superior. Nurses can fall into this mindset too, even though we all know we couldn't do our jobs effectively without the support of CNAs. This needs to change. Putting your trust in the CNAs can be the difference between having a good shift on a calm floor and dealing with disgruntled, unruly patients. When I'm precepting new nurses, I make it a point to emphasize how important it is to trust and listen to their CNAs, because you are our eyes and ears on the floor. Our next story is Bank Customer Stymied. Many years ago, I worked for a bank. It opened 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and 9 to 12 noon on Saturday. We were paid during opening hours, but set up and branch closing always seemed to be, unfairly, on our time. Saturdays tended to be quiet, so we prepped branch closing ahead of time. We all had assigned actions and should have been able to leave the branch within 2 minutes of closure. Enter Mr. Tosspot. Mr. Tosspot was a slimy individual with no known friends. He had one of those smug smiles, and I'm fairly sure he hated women. We were all low-paid women, and most had young children that they wanted to get home to see. Mr. Tosspot would hang around outside until 11:58 a.m. Then he would come in and make a big show of slowly getting his paperwork out. He would ask the same stupid questions every Saturday just to waste our time. If anyone showed slight annoyance, it made him happy. We waited him out until one day he had to say, I do hope that I'm not delaying you from your weekend and family time. Smug smile on a face that was begging to be slapped with a crowbar. My genius colleague responded with a smile, not at all. After 12, we get paid triple for every minute of overtime. So you're doing us a big favor. Thank you so much. His face was a picture, and then he tried to rush the transaction, which we wouldn't allow. He was sweating and irritated. You could tell he wanted to shout at us. We just kept our customer service smiles on the whole time. That was the last time he ever attempted to arrive late. I mean, if what OP says is true, then shoot, I wouldn't mind dealing with this guy a little bit. I mean, it's not like it's going to be a lot of overtime, but I mean, that's a little extra cash for not a lot of work, right? Technos commented, I used to have an absent-minded client, Bob, who would schedule a meeting and then leave me waiting half the time. It wasn't the end of the world. I billed for the inconvenience and he didn't whine about paying. Then he asked for a last-minute meeting with me at 5:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I almost declined, as none of the work could even be started before the second week of January anyway, and I had places I wanted to be. But then again, I know Bob's got a family and is gonna want to get out on time, so he at least won't keep me waiting, right? I was wrong. So wrong. At 6:15, he still hadn't shown, so I pop out to his assistant's desk and ask if she would page Bob for me again. The assistant said sure, but you know Bob, look at the bright side. Every little bit of extra pay helps this time of year. I know I'm glad for the overtime. I said, I suppose you're right. If he wants to pay me $15 a minute to sit around and drink coffee, so be it. The assistant said, excuse me, how much? I said $15 a minute. It's after 6 on a Friday, making it weekend rate plus evening rate, and on top of that, it's Christmas Eve, so... The assistant must have reminded Bob how much his tardiness was costing the company, because only $82.50 later, Bob appeared, out of breath, to sincerely apologize and reschedule. "Oh, don't worry, I only billed at normal rate." Bob's apology was a good one, and the reminder did have the desired effect because he was on time a whole lot more often afterwards. I don't think I waited more than 10 minutes for the rest of the time I worked for him. Our next story is, I stole his ashes out of spite. This happened last year, and honestly it's probably the pettiest thing I've ever done. Let's start at the beginning. My bio dad was never really around when I was a kid. When he left, most of his side of the family went with him. The only ones who stayed in contact were my aunt and my grandfather, both of whom have since passed. I had an okay relationship with my half-sister growing up, but that was about it. When I was 16, I finally met some of my dad's family. He still didn't show up. I built a relationship with my grandmother around that time, but I didn't actually meet my dad until I was 20, and even then it was only over the phone and online. Fast forward to last year, I was 29 when he died. Nobody told me. My sister even drove 10 hours to visit him in the hospital while he was on life support for 2 days. Meanwhile, I found out after he died when his ex-wife, not my mom, just some random woman, messaged me offering her condolences. That was how I learned he was gone. It hurt. I had spent most of my life wanting to meet him, and it turned out he had moved back to the area a year before he died. He had a relationship with my sister, but apparently me and our younger sister didn't make the cut. So like any reasonable person, I did a little digging, found out which mortuary had him, and gave them a call. They told me my grandmother and sister said they had no way of contacting me, which is hilarious considering they're both on my Facebook, where I'm extremely active, and my sister used to call me at least once a week before all of this. The mortuary needed a majority of his children to consent to cremation, so I called my younger sister, and together we went down there and signed the new paperwork. We arranged it so that the ashes would come straight to me. They said that they couldn't give me the urn that had already been purchased, it had to go to whoever paid for it. So basically, my grandmother paid for an urn and was handed an empty one. Now my dad's ashes are in the back of my closet. I handed out some to my nieces and nephews. My younger sister wanted nothing to do with him, and honestly, I don't blame her. I told my grandmother and sister that they could apologize first if they wanted to make things right. There has been dead silence. No regrets. I'm gonna be honest, I feel like maybe it's a tad bit far, but hey, if it gets OP through whatever they need to get through, they have an inheritance right to the ashes, I guess. And it doesn't really seem like anybody else is fighting all that hard for the ashes anyway, then I suppose there's really no problem at all with what OP did. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.